One. Okay. Shavua Tov. As we're on camera. So next Sunday, we're not going to have a class, which is one of the reasons I want to make sure we want to finish Psalm 122 this week. It's short, but Bezrat Hashem won't be able to do it in a minute. But next week, if you can, the OU is sponsoring a special program that's tefillah on the Tayelet in Talpiot. And they're going to have, I got to be honest, I don't know the artist, the performer that's going to be there, but they're having a band that's going to lead us in Hallel. And I assume, I assume that we're starting at 8, and I don't think we'll finish before 10 is my expectation. But I do suggest strongly that people go there. 2 reasons. Number one, it's nice to have a wonderful tefillah for Yom Yerushalayim. One of my saddest feelings about Aliyah, about living in Eretz Yisrael, is how most of the country ignores Yom Yerushalayim. Baruch Hashem, Yerushalayim doesn't. But the rest of the country, it's just a regular day. Very few people outside a working day. First of all, working day for sure, number one. But beyond that, totally ignored. And I feel so bad for the younger generation who isn't dati le'umi, because the Haredim ignore the day too. If you're not in that, like 10% of the country, maybe 12% of the country, that's Orthodox and Zionistic, the day is ignored. And that means the kids aren't going to know what a tremendous miracle it was in 1967. It's very, very, to me, very, very sad.
You know Taflit?
Yeah.
Bring people from Motzaretz,
right,
in North America. They were here during the week of Yom Yerushalayim.
Yeah.
Where were they on that day?
I have no idea.
They were all in Tel Aviv. Visiting museums.
Okay, it's interesting that's sad.
They don't want to
right?
be here.
They don't want to be, because the left wing is embarrassed that we won, because now what do we do with Yehuda and Shomron? They're confused. The ultra orthodox, don't want to be involved. The Haredim don't want to be involved, because that undermines their entire position that the Zionist state should be forbidden. So it's a real problem. Please, Jay.
What you say is correct, and I agree with you, but there has to be improvement. When I came with Aliyah, the first day was a paid holiday, and they flew red flags.
Well, that's because labor was still right. Yeah, Likud got rid of that. But when labor, we were a socialist state. Every year till he died, Shimon Peres went to the international socialist conventions. He continued to view himself, even when he was president of the Medina, as a socialist. It's very interesting. So May 1st was a Yom Tov. It's true. Most people don't remember that, because we've become a much more capitalist state, and that credit doesn't go to Bibi, the prime minister. That goes to Bibi, the finance minister. Whether you like Bibi as a prime minister or not, he was perhaps the greatest finance minister we ever had. That's his real calling. He changed the economy of the country in so many ways that we just became a capitalist state. When they talk about, the startup country, he gets a lot of credit. But we have to get to our topic. You get me? I could stay on this one forever, but Okay, Lo Kashua. Yep.
No, but I think you'll enjoy hearing it, because I loved your columns.
Oh, thank you.
In the tidbits.
Yeah, thank
all
you.
your references, all your nostalgic references that I thought only I knew. I remember.
I got a couple of emails that recognized the quote from the man from La Mancha. I got a couple of quotes,
Johnny Carson show.
and that was the beginning. Yeah.
Before your time, I think.
Oh no!
No, the one,
I remember when the show started with.
Trust your wife.
No. Well, but I remember when the Tonight Show started with Steve Allen.
Yes.
Then Jack Parr. Then Johnny Carson. Don't get me going, guys. Okay, this is very embarrassing. My pre-firm days, it's very
I
bad.
was from, so what?
I wasn't. I was.
You watched Jack Parr before you went to sleep.
Of course, he put you to sleep. Johnny Carson didn't. He kept you up. Okay, so what happens is, Ivan, you missed all the fun. Shavua Tov. But what's happened is 2 weeks ago we did the Shir Amalos that we sing before benching, and we saw the Zionist / Jerusalem references there. Last week we did Al Narot Bavel, so we sort of looked at it from the sad point of view. And this week we're going to take a look at just a beautiful little poem that just encapsulates so much about Yerushalayim, and I'm sorry I wasted that time, but I want to start with a quote. One of the people that I check up on when I'm preparing for Shiur is Rav Elchanan Samet, who's a Rabbi at Yeshivat Har Zion, teaches at Machon Herzog, and he has many articles on Psalms that are online. You can get them on the VBM website, and he has a 3-part article on this very short poem. And although I disagree with a lot of his ultimate analysis of the poem, he says it's 4 parts. I think it's only 3. But besides the fact that he begins his article in a beautiful way, and I want to read his first paragraph in just a second. Those of us who remember 67, and I watched it on Huntley Brinkley. Some people watched it on Walter Cronkite. Doesn't make any difference. But it was just so amazing on the Wednesday of the 6-Day War, Chavchet Iyar, when the Tzanchanim took over Har HaBayit, and all the news shows in America showed the Tzanchanim rushing over the plaza, and you heard Matzagur, Oliver Shalom, saying Har HaBayit B'Yadeinu. You could hear it. And they played that tape over and over again on the news in the States. And I cried. It was, but Elchanan Samet, who's 10 years younger than me, okay, who was, I was a teenager, he was a little boy, he remembers it from living in Yerushalayim. And he says it differently. He didn't watch Huntley Brinkley. Okay, I was still a youngster during the 6-Day War. On the 3rd day of the war, which fell out on Wednesday, Chavchet Iyar, 5727, the shelling of Jerusalem abated, and we could leave our bomb shelter. During the afternoon, while listening to reports about the fighting coming from the old, massive radio in our home, now you have to understand, Israel didn't have TV in 67. Ben-Gurion was against TV, and there was no, even though he wasn't prime minister anymore, we didn't have TV yet. TV started, I believe, I was going to say 70. It was 69? I believe you. Great. Oh, that was 69, correct? Okay. The program suddenly stopped, and in a tremulous voice, the broadcaster announced that the old city had been liberated. Twice, the broadcaster repeated the announcement and fell upon our house. Immediately following his announcement, the broadcaster read Psalm 122. And we're going to look at the poem from the traditional point of view, but also from the vantage point of 1967. And what happens is, at the end of this, it was clear to me that the song was composed in anticipation of this liberation of Yerushalayim. Rarely does a chapter of scripture enjoy current significance as sharply as that moment. We were mamish living David HaMelech's nevuah, his prophecy of what was going to happen. This is the force of the Psalm of Tehillim. Even though they had been written for their own time and their own place, readers across the generations, I could say the millennia, have found in them expressions of their own sentiments. And that's what's going on in our poem. So let's begin. Already late. Okay. Sher Ma'alat David. We give David HaMelech credit for this poem, even though it's talking about Aliyat HaRegel. Apparently, Aliyat HaRegel, going to Yerushalayim for the pilgrimage festivals, apparently started with David HaMelech even before there was a Beit HaMikdash. We know, of course, that there are historians that claim that it was written at a later time, but I think we can accept the traditional approach that Aliyat HaRegel, the tribes going to Yerushalayim for the pilgrimage festivals, began even before Shlomo HaMelech had built the Beit HaMikdash. The Aron was there, the Korbanot were there. It made sense. There's nothing wrong with that pshat. Okay. Samachti, the first two lines, is the first bayit, if you will, the first section of the poem. Samachti ba'omrimli. I was happy. I'm sitting at home, and I was happy when people started saying to me, Beit Hashem Elech, let's go to Harabayit. In other words, I don't know what it is, depending on how far you live from Yerushalayim. It's a week. It's a fortnight before Yontiv, and people say, let's go. And it's like once people said the words, let's go up to Harabayit, samachti. It filled me with joy, just the idea that we're going to spend Chag in Yerushalayim, in Harabayit. It's just, I was already happy. That's the first shlav. That's the first stage of the process. The second stage, Omdot hayu ragleinu. Now he's talking to Yerushalayim, and he's saying, when our feet stood at the threshold of your gates, at that point, it was very special, Jerusalem. There was a different, even more intense kind of joy going on. So it started at home. And then there we were at the threshold of the gate, and we're standing there, and we're saying, wow, we made it. Now, what does that mean? Now, I think pshat is, lahavdo, it's like Disney World. They were standing in line, waiting to get into Yerushalayim, because there were so many people that were coming to bring their chagigah, their korban, the sacrifice for the yontiv, that they had to wait their turn. So we're standing there in line, waiting to get into Yerushalayim. That's pshat on what's going on here. Not the part about Disney World, but the idea that they had to wait to get into the city because it was so crowded, that is pshat. Go back to 67. This describes the 19 years from 48 to 67. When omdot hayu ragleinu, our feet were standing on the threshold, but we couldn't go there. In other words, that's what it's talking about. It's just, when for 11 years, I helped lead 8th grade tours from America to here. And I would you'd stand in Mamila Mall, Mamila Mall, which is so beautiful. The kids love Mamila Mall, right? And I try to explain to them where we're standing used to be these corrugated walls with barbed wire. And they had little peepholes so you could look through. But if the corrugated walls weren't there, the Jordanian soldiers on the walls of the old city would shoot you. And it was in Mamash, in the middle of Yerushalayim. And it's like, all the kids are saying, can we go now, Rabbi? Can we go now? Because they were going to get free time in the mall. You're trying to tell them these stories about it. And most of them, okay, are you done? Can we go? But we remember. We remember and if you don't remember, we still have the black and white pictures of what it was like. And that was the border. The Mamila Mall was the border. And you just couldn't get to the other side. Our feet, but we can't go there. Our feet are right by you go to the King David. No, not that I go to the King David Hotel, but if you go to the King David's beautiful, backyard and a swimming pool, and right beyond the swimming pool was Bob Dwyer. I mean, it's like we don't remember Baruch Hashem because we have Yerushalayim. And now we stop talking about our personal relationship and situation. And the next three psukim describe how wonderful Yerushalayim is. Okay? So let's take a look. Yerushalayim habenuya. Jerusalem, which is built up. Now, it's so funny because David HaMelech is talking about Jerusalem. Wow, we built it up. But of course, he didn't have the temple yet. And the entire city was Ir David. And he incorporated Har HaBayit. There wasn't the temple there, but he had bought it. And so it's all built up. Of course, it's about, 1/5 of the old city, let alone what a tiny percentage it is of the Jerusalem municipality today. But to him, it's wow. It's all built up. It was like Kansas City in the musical Oklahoma. They've gone about as far as they can go, right? Okay. So in other words, it's modern. It's like wow. We got everything, but they had compared to what we have. They had a tiny peninsula of a city. And then he says the great line: Ir shechubra lo yachtov. We could spend the rest of our time talking about that phrase. The city that is chubra, connected, attached to itself. Okay? That's what that line means. However, what does it mean? Pshat in Chubra Lo Yachtav is probably talking aesthetically. It's probably talking aesthetically. It's pshat, is the simplest literal meaning of the line. Is talking about the aesthetics of the way the city was joined together and all the parts seem to fit. Sometimes you describe a good-looking person, you say, "Oh, they're put together," right? Well, the idea, yeah, they're put together well. They carry it off because the way they look and the way they dress, and they do it appropriately, right? So that's pshat, that the city looked right the way it was developed. It was aesthetically pleasing to the eye from the distance. The second pshat is that when you looked at it from the distance, there didn't seem to be any empty spaces. Remember, the city at those days was all on slopes. So when you looked at it from afar, you couldn't tell that there were streets or alleyways, really, between the buildings. They all looked like they were connected to each other. So again, that's the aesthetics of looking at the city from a distance. However, what did the Midrash and the rabbis over the years say? It's the city that Chubra Layachtav, that brought everybody together. That all the Jews became chaverim. All the Jews became friends. And that's sort of foreshadowing verse 8 at the bottom, where we talk about, our brothers and our colleagues at the end of the poem. Jerusalem made us all into family, made us all into one group. Okay? Everyone see that? However, there's a fascinating pshat that's given by, I'm almost positive it's the Radak. Anyways, by a Rishon. And he says, it's the city that got joined together. Why was it joined together? Because apparently there were two separate areas. One was called Sion, which is Har HaBayit, or the area just below Har HaBayit. And the rest was called originally Yevus, but we call it Yerushalayim. So it's Ir Shechubra Lo Yachtav, a city that had disparate parts, which were joined together, which of course is what happened.
What about Yudah and Benjamin?
And Benjamin had Sion, Tzion was Binyamin, and Yevus, or Lady Yerushalayim, was in Yehuda. That's true. It joined together from two different tribes. Correct. I wasn't going to mention that detail, but you're 100% correct. Okay? And that's what happened in 67. Again, it's like a prophecy foreshadowing the events of 67. A split city, a city whose heart was barbed wire, became one city. That didn't become one city right away. And those of us that remember Route 1, the Route 1 that goes north of Yerushalayim from Shar Shechem and goes up toward the police academy, and then further beyond that to, not the police academy, the police headquarters, and then goes towards French Hill, right? It was no man's land even after, until sometime in the 90s. They called that area that nobody was building on. The Arabs weren't building on one side and we weren't building on our side. They called it the Tefer. They called it the stitched area between the seam between the two parts of the city. And now Baruch Hashem and Ramat Eshkol seemed like another world. People didn't want to go to Ramat Eshkol because it was so far away. I mean, it's like you can't imagine it today, right? Nobody wanted to live there. The government
bought his apartment there in 1970.
Good for him.
It was occupied territory then.
But in those days, the government was basically giving away apartments up there to policemen because they had the national headquarters of the police department up there. But only later did the city really get joined together. And the final thing that made the city really feel whole was the light rail. When the light rail goes right along what was that seam between East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem. Now you almost don't see that as two separate cities, but you saw that until the 90s at some point, maybe even until 2000. And this is what happened, of course. And again, we look at this pasuk as a description of what these olim, what these pilgrims saw coming to Yerushalayim then, but it fits in for what happened in our own generation. Shesham alu shvatim, that there all the tribes came together. The halcyon years of the united monarchy, which sadly didn't last that long. It was basically the reigns of David and Solomon, okay? When the country was dedicated to being one nation, as opposed to during the time of the Shoftim, and then later in the rebellion in the time of Rehoboam, okay, it became split, where people's allegiance was primarily to their tribe. So this is referring to that great period of David and Shlomo when our allegiance was to the nation as a nation. It's almost like the United States, before the Civil War. People talked about themselves not as Americans, but as citizens of their own state. You still hear some people say that, but it's not such a big deal. States' rights is not such a big deal today like it once was. Everybody says we're Americans. But for Israel, it was only a short time when people called themselves B'nai Israel. Otherwise, they'd say, who are you? And they'd say, oh, I'm Ephraim, right? Or I'm Binyamin. They didn't say, I am B'nai Israel. But during David and Shlomo, they did. And that's what this is talking about. Shesham alu shvatim. Shivtei Ka. It wasn't just a political designation that we are the tribes of Israel. It was a religious designation. We're the tribes of God. Our unity is not only geopolitical. Our unity is spiritual. Going to Yerushalayim is edut liYisrael, is testimony about Israel. The fact that we make Aliyat HaRegel, that we make a pilgrimage to Yerushalayim for one of the 3 pilgrimage festivals, is testimony to the unity of the Jewish nation. Now, it's an argument amongst the commentaries what exactly we're testifying to. Now, I think pshat is we're testifying to the unity of the nation under God. One nation under God. Okay? I mean, I know the United States borrowed that, but that's what was going on under David and Shlomo. We were truly, that's what the pasuk is saying, one nation under God. With liberty and justice. No. They were just one nation under God. With Torah, right? But some people say that the word edut here doesn't mean testimony. Some people say it comes from the idea of va'ad or moed. It was a meeting place. So the pshat, according to that, would be that there the tribes of God met together for Israel. They felt like they were one nation because va'ad moed, they made a meeting place. They came together, sort of like Hakel. The whole nation joined together and in a meeting, which is a nice pshat. Others say there's testimony to the mitzvah. Edut is sometimes used to mean a mitzvah. And so some people say it's the mitzvah of going to Yerushalayim for the pilgrimage festivals, which is a nice pshat. But I think that I like what I originally said. It's testimony either about the unity of the nation or testimony that God brought us together. I like that last idea because that's what happened in 67. In 67, in many ways, Jews recognized Hashem. People that didn't recognize Hashem before. That people that were not dati saw the events of 67 as miraculous. So the joining together of Yerushalayim was testimony to God's relationship and concern for the Jewish nation. And this is very, very powerful. A lot of people found the events of 67 extremely moving. There was, a spike in Aliyah. There was a spike in synagogue attendance. There was also a spike that continued in day school attendance. Starting in 1968, day school attendance jumped dramatically. And part of the reason for it was the events in Israel. There was another reason for it too. Some of us remember the other reason for it. The other reason for the tremendous jump in day school attendance. Integration, busing. Yeah, busing, that they were busing Jewish kids to schools where there might be a lot of blacks. And so they went to day school instead. But I don't want to diminish the Zionist aspect of it also, even though there were other realities going on. It's amazing how great the civil rights movement was for the day school movement. Day schools benefited tremendously from that reality. But for us, 1967 was again confirmation of the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu cares about Klal Yisrael. I'm going to do this quickly. I don't know how many of you remember how precarious the situation in Israel appeared in May of 1967. I mean, it really looked like there was no chance of the Medina surviving the war. I mean, when
It was a question of numbers.
Oh, yeah. There was one rally. They used to show there was these rallies in Cairo, and NASA would get up, and there would be signs in English, destroy Israel, push them into the sea. On purpose, the demonstrators would hold up signs in English as well as the Arabic signs because they knew it was being photographed for news around the world. Yeah, please.
The war began on a Monday morning, the night before.
Correct.
I attended a meeting in Philadelphia. People were organizing to bring the children out of Israel.
Yeah, to evacuate. Yes. And then Israel had notified the United States to bring ships to the coast for evacuation purposes. I mean, really, the situation looked extremely, extremely dire. There was, but what the thing I want to say, although what Jay says is fabulous and recalls the moment well, one of those rallies in Cairo had more people in it. One of those rallies had more people than lived in Israel at the time. So one rally in downtown Cairo had over 2 million people, which was greater than the population of Israel at the time. And so when you talk about numbers, the numbers were scary, were very, very scary. And I remember having nightmares the night when Utant, the head of the UN, said he was remove the peacekeeping troops from the Sinai Peninsula, which at the time seemed like the only thing that was standing between Israel and Rahman al-Islam, another Holocaust. I couldn't believe. They were like our final line of defense. Egypt won't invade because they'll have to kill UN troops, right? And so that was like the thing we were banking on. And then within a week, all the UN troops were gone. Please.
Fortunately for us, the Egyptians knew how to rally. They didn't know as well how to fight.
There was some good fighters in there, they get a bum rap because we outsmarted them. It was their leadership, but there were a lot of good fighters in the Egyptian army. But Baruch Hashem, miraculously, and because of good planning combination. I don't want to diminish the role of Tzahal. It was a combination, but okay. Lahodot l'shem Hashem. The purpose of coming to Yerushalayim is to give thanksgiving to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, don't mistake all of this political unity, all of this Zionist fervor for spiritual zeal as well. It's also a spiritual statement, lahodot, to thank and acknowledge the blessings that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has placed upon us. And we were impressed with Yerushalayim, Kishama Yashvu Kisot LaMishpat. So what have you got in Yerushalayim? You've got the cultic headquarters, the temple. So that's our religious capital. But also Kisot LaMishpat. Next to Harabayit was the Sanhedrin, was the great court, seats of justice. Kisot LeBeit David, and the seats for the monarchy. So Jerusalem was our capital religiously, politically, well, even before politically, judicially and politically. And if you read Parshat Shoftim in Sefer Devarim, you see that we invented separation of powers within governments. There's not exactly checks and balances. It's not that firm, not that well developed. But there are the Kohanim, there are the Dayanim, the Shoftim, and there is the king. That we have these different branches of government. We invented that. And we invented the idea that sometimes the judges have power over the king. So we invented constitutional monarchy way before 1688. And the glorious revolution in England. The Torah is above the king. That's why the king had to carry a Sefer Torah with him everywhere. So Yerushalayim had all of this. All of this was combined. This is important because previously, I don't even know where the Sanhedrin was sitting. I don't know. But the Ark, the Aron, was in Kiryat Ye'arim, which today is called Telstone, okay? The government was in Hebron. The first 7 years of David's kingship was in Hebron. So King David in the Pasuk is very excited over the fact that all of the branches of the Jewish governance have been united in Yerushalayim. That's pshat in verse Hey. and King David finds this as a very special reality that Baruch Hashem, he achieved in his 8th year as king in Eretz Yisrael. It took a while, even for King David, to get this unity together. And it happened there in Yerushalayim. That's the second part of it. So the first part of the poem is our excitement as pilgrims going there. The middle part of the poem is a paean to the greatness of Yerushalayim. And the end of the poem is a prayer. And it's a double prayer. It's a prayer for Yerushalayim and for the people who love it. So it's a double prayer at the end of the poem. Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim. Now, of course, this inspired the famous poem by our greatest post-biblical poet, Yehuda Halevi, when he said, Tzion, 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 Halo Tishali. Okay? That the idea of Sha'alu, that we have to seek and we have to request the peace, the benefit of Yerushalayim. Yishla'u Oavecha. Those who love her have shalva. Now, shalva means a lot of things. From my wife, shalva means her granddaughter. Okay, that's a great name. For my kids, it means a breakfast cereal, right? For my grandchildren, especially, it means a sweet breakfast cereal. I guess it's the Israeli version of, I guess, sugar smacks.
They didn't have anything else.
Yeah, shalva. That's, that was a very, very sweet cereal. Okay, with the sugar, there's a little bit of grain, right, in shalva. But anyways, but what does the word really mean? Now, we translate this word in many, many ways. It can be translated as sort of a joy or a tranquility, a harmony. What's the translation you have in front of you?
Okay, those who love you live harmonious.
Harmony goes for harmony. Okay, serene. That's a nice translation. I like serenity or tranquility personally. The Malbim explains that the two terms shalom and shalva go together. Shalom represents the outer manifestation of this sense of well-being. Shalva is the inner sense of well-being, which I like. Tranquility or serenity, maybe serenity even best. Okay? And that's how the Malbim says the two words really go together. Shalom is what the world outside perceives. Shalva is what you are feeling inside. So we say, pray for the peace of Yerushalayim, its wholeness, okay, and for the tranquility, the harmony of those who love you, who love Jerusalem. Yehi shalom bechelech shalva ba'amonatecha. This is the source for the Malbim's pshat, that there should be peace on, I'm going to say ramparts, even though I don't think that's the correct pshat, but that's the most famous translation. Peace on the ramparts, which means the outer walls, and shalva, peace on the outside of the city, and shalva, tranquility, harmony in the innermost palaces inside the city. The chel is the outermost walls of a city. Sometimes it's a small wall connected to a dike that goes around, okay? But the idea is the chel is the way outside. And Amonotayach, the Armon, the palaces are way on the inside. If this were a medieval European castle, the chel would be the moat, and the Armon would be the keep, way on the inside. But that's the picture we have, that Jerusalem had this tremendous sense of peacefulness, serenity, tranquility, both outside klape chutz and inside klape pnim. And both of them are very, very powerful. Not only was Jerusalem not being threatened from the outside, but believe it or not, The Jews inside were getting along. The second one is more remarkable than the first. Yeah, please.
Just read the 2 lines here in this question. Permanent peace will come to the world only with the gathering of the exiles from the 4 corners of the earth. Until then, Jerusalem will never experience true peace because many nations will war over this city.
Okay, looking at it in the sense that the entire world depends upon this. Fine, okay, which is great. And now, of course, we get to the end of the poem, and I feel like singing. I feel like singing the Kalbach Nigun, one of my favorite Kalbach Nigunim, and I won't destroy it by trying to sing it for it. Lema'an, so the benefit of everything we've talked about, this inner and outer peace that's going on in Yerushalayim, and the benefits that we're talking about are on behalf of Achai v'Re'ai. What's the difference between Achai and Re'ai? And if you were sensitive a couple of weeks ago, when we read Parshat Kedoshim, we have like V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha and Lo sisna et achecha bilvavecha. Now, as the terminology is used back in the Torah, okay? So there are in the Torah, there are three levels of humanity, okay? There is humanity, there are people, and those people that you can't really be nasty to. Then there are Re'im, and these people, not only is it prohibited to be nasty to them, but you're supposed to be good to them. And the word Re'ah means people with whom I share something in common. Today, I would say that means, I'm not making this up, I'm really quoting from the Meiri. Re'im, according to the Meiri, means people that believe in what we tend to call ethical monotheism. So he includes in Re'im Christians and Muslims. So V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha excludes idolaters, but includes monotheists throughout the world. So they're our colleagues. And then there are fellow Jews, and fellow Jews are mishpacha. Fellow Jews are achi, my brother. I love that expression. I mean, it's like the Jewish version of bro. Achi, right? Achi. The white version. The Jewish version of bro is achi. But you hear Israelis talking to each other, achi. And it's beautiful that they call each other my brother. A fellow Jew is mishpacha. The Torah Tamima, and explaining the laws of charging interest says, we understand that interest is not a bad thing, that the economy of the world requires it, but you don't charge your brother. And since we're supposed to view every Jew as mishpacha, therefore, you don't charge them interest when you make a loan from them. Now, I just want to mention the Torah Tamima, who his name was Rav Epstein, Rav Baruch Halevi Epstein. Just want to mention he was not a professional rabbi. As a living, he was a banker. So he didn't want to say anything bad about bank policy and charging interest. So anyways, but his pshat, I think, is a good one. There's nothing wrong with interest per se, but you don't charge it to family, which is why it's asur to take interest from a fellow Jew. And that's what's going on, I think, in this pasuk. We're praying, and by the way, this fits into the pshat you were just reading. We're praying for the benefit of Jerusalem and those that love Jerusalem. And who benefits? The entirety of the Jewish nation, achi, and Ro'i, which means all those people who share our common sense of humanity and ethics and morality. I think that's pshat. Having said that, I think that that's pshat, I want to give another interpretation, which a lot of people like. Achi, according to this more popular position than the one I just presented, which is more universal, the other pshat that's given, Achi, are those who actually came to Yerushalayim. Those who made Aliyat HaRegel. That's my brethren. Those are people with them in Yerushalayim. As opposed to V're'ai means my colleagues, my fellow Jews, because there are Meforshim, many Rishonim, that feel that the term Re'ah is only used for a Jew. And then V'ahavta l'recha kamocha only means Jews. I happen to like the pshat of the Meiri, that it means those people that share, basic morality and ethics, and believe in Tanakh, basically. That those people are in Re'ah. Comrades. People with whom we share something. And the sharing is ethics, morality. But a more famous pshat is, Achai are those who are with me in Yerushalayim, and Re'ai are the other Jews who didn't make it, whether they're in Galut or they stayed home. And so that it's on behalf of both the Jews in Yerushalayim and the Jews who didn't make it to Yerushalayim for the pilgrimage. Adabra na shalom bach. I'm going to talk now, please, about peace for you. So shalom goes back to what we said before, that there should be this sense of well-being that surrounds all of these people. And then it goes on to not only say for the people, Leman Beit Hashem Elokeinu, that this is on behalf of the house of the Lord our God, the Beit HaMikdash. And of course, this prayer is not only for the Beit HaMikdash and that stood from Shlomo HaMelech and Second Temple, but hopes for the future temple. Avaksha Tov Lach. I am praying for goodness on your behalf. I just want to go back to one point. So basically, that's the poem. So I'm going to go over a couple of minutes, but it's okay. There's a famous pshat on that goes back to verse Daled. Shesham alu shvatim shiftei God, that there went up all the tribes of Israel, the tribes of God. Edut li Israel. This was testimony to Israel. Now, so I like the pshat that edut means testimony. We saw other pshatim. We saw another couple of approaches. What specifically was the testimony for Israel? So the Midrash brings down on this particular pasuk that the testimony was the famous miracle that took place in Yerushalayim every year, especially during Pesach. Yerushalayim was most crowded during Pesach. Jews felt the greatest urgency to come to Yerushalayim Pesach time. Out of the three pilgrimage holidays, the least observed was Shavuot. And that made sense. Number one, it was only one day. That was number one. Number two, it's the busiest time of the year for farmers. They're just starting the reaping, and it's really so getting to Yerushalayim. So Shavuot was not that well attended. People brought Bikurim, on Shavuot, but you could bring Bikurim all summer long. Bikurim continued all the way to Sukkot. So the first fruits could be brought. So not that many people, but the city got really crowded. But what was the famous miracle that's brought down in the Gemara in Yuma, but it's also brought down in other places also, that what happened? Nobody felt crowded. That, and specifically in the Gemara in Yuma, it says that when they were Kora'im, when they bowed down for Shem Hashem, when the Kohen Gadol said the name that we never say, Yud Kei Vav Kei, right? And everybody bows and says, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Olam Ve'en. And there was room for everybody to do it. That's the miracle, right? So when we read this poem, there's so many thoughts that should be welled up about the miracles of 67 and about Yerushalayim of David HaMelech and love for the city and love for fellow Jews. I mean, especially at the end of the poem, there's so many thoughts and emotions that should well up within us. But the greatest thought that we should come away from this poem with is the miracle of Jerusalem. And when I say the miracle of Jerusalem, I don't mean any specific, the 6-Day War or the space situation in the Beit HaMikdash. I mean just that Yerushalayim is something just so very special, and it affects people. I know there are Meshuggahs that it affects, but that's a representation of the fact that it's hard to deny that Yerushalayim has something miraculous about it. And I want to end with one more pshat in Eshe Chubra Lo Yachdav. And I left this for the end on purpose. Yerushalayim, the name Yerushalayim is a grammatical anomaly. What do I mean by that? The word Yerushalayim appears in Tanakh 667 times. And all but 5 of them, it appears without the yud at the end, Yerushalayim. So it should be read Yerushalayim. Only 5 times does it appear with that yud making it Yerushalayim, but we always call it Yerushalayim. What's the name Yerushalayim seem to hint at?
2.
That there's 2 of them. Yadayim, Raglayim, Pamayim, right? Yerushalayim. But really it's written as if there's only one. When we say Eshe Chubra Lo Yachdav, the city that connects itself to itself, is because really there are 2 Jerusalems. There's one down here in Olam Hazeh, and there's one in Shemayim. And the connection, the interface between Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba is Yerushalayim. And whether it's our tefillot or our neshamot that go from this world to the next, they leave from Yerushalayim and arrive on the other side in Yerushalayim. So it's the city that combines together not just the nation, but it combines our physical realm with the spiritual realm. And that's just part of the miracle of Yerushalayim. And it's something that all of us should be cognizant of all the time. It's something that we daven about. It's part of our Shmona Esrei. We end Shmona Esrei by stepping back and praying for Yerushalayim. But especially a week from today on Yom Yerushalayim, this concept, this idea should truly be our focus. And whether you come with us next week to the Tayelet for the wonderful tefillah there, or you don't, whatever you do, make sure that Yom Yerushalayim is special. And let other people know. Leman achai v'reyai. Let other people know how special Yerushalayim is to you, and then maybe it'll become special to them too. Okay. Please.
The first quote you quoted, Rob, I didn't get his name.
Samit. His name is Elchanan Samit.